There are many wonderful stories in the Old Testament, events that happen that teach us a lot about the nature of God and what his plan is for people. I was reminded of this event that Russ just read about, but the history goes all the way back to 2 Kings. And that has to do with the story of Naaman. And if you've been here for a while, you know I've spoken on Naaman a few times, but it's kind of hard to stay away from the story since it really covers so much about the nature and the love and compassion of God and how God continues to work even today. So there's definitely a lot of very good lessons for us. And I was reminded of this again just a couple weeks ago in our Wednesday night Bible class in the book of Luke, where it did come up, this verse, again, that Russ read, that made me reflect again on this event that happened many, many years ago in the days of Elisha. So we want to go through this, and so the story is, if you remember, Naaman is the one who went to the Jordan River and went in. He had to bathe or to go under 7 times in order for him to be healed, and thus I get the title, Washed in Tide. Now we know that maybe there wasn't a really big tide that happened with the river. It's not like it is the ocean, but that's the best I could do with the title, but we know that he was cleansed by this. I was thinking about songs I could have given to Ken. Be not dismayed, whate'er betide. So there's your tide right there. So completely off subject, I know. So this story helps us as we think about our lives and maybe even what our responsibility is, kind of what we've accepted and what we can share with other people. So we're going to go through this, the story about this great commander. So Naaman was a commander of the army of Aram. He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram, and he was a valiant soldier. So we could probably spend all morning on this one verse because it says a lot about him as a person, about his character, about his commitment and dedication, what people thought of him. And so he was very successful. He was very powerful. Today we would call him maybe the general in the army. He was the highest one that could come up. And so, the king would have put certainly a lot of his life in this man's hands. So he trusted him fully because he was leading the army. Now, as we go through this lesson, something that maybe we miss, at least I miss, and sometimes when you get older, you kind of look at things, I've never seen that before, but then somebody will say, well, you saw that like last year. So it's memory more than it is, not seeing it before. But that's a good thing about, losing your memory. It's like every time it's fresh, it goes, whoa, look at that. I mean, I can watch a movie that I watched yesterday, and I'll be sitting at the edge of my seat, what happens? How does it end? I'm not quite that bad. But one of the joys of losing your mind is you can experience everything brand new again. But the thing with this is, you look at what this man is, we find out that he is a Gentile. Now, even as we go through when Jesus brought this up again in the New Testament, when he was talking to the religious leaders and the people even of his own hometown, it's like maybe the biggest thing is not he was a Gentile. The biggest thing, he was an enemy of Israel. I mean, you just have to go to 1 Kings, and we find that this nation was constantly fighting against Israel. I mean, the previous king to Aram would send his troops into Israel and say, if you don't give us all your silver and gold and all the stuff and your wives and children, we're going to come and fight against you. And the king at that time, Ahab, now, he wasn't that good of a king either, but he was like, okay, And then they did it a second time. They said, no, we're going to fight. And so there's constant battles. I mean, could you imagine this is your enemy now? But out of all the things we could say about Naaman, a lot of good things, he did have a problem. Now, we may think even in the New Testament, there's sometimes people that came to Jesus and said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? I've got a lot of things going for me. I've just got one problem. There's just one thing you lack. He had one thing, he had everything going for him. I'm sure he was popular. He was esteemed, probably wealthy, powerful in position. One problem. It's a big problem though, isn't it? He had leprosy. That's not just some minor thing. He had leprosy. We know that leprosy, once it gets fully developed, causes a lot of major health issues, relationship issues. You had to quarantine yourself. Today we talk about this, it was bigger than coronavirus, right? Maybe even bigger today than what we would say even what AIDS was. You remember back, several years ago, there was a big fear. Anybody who has AIDS is like some big contagious disease that, you can just catch and, then you're going to die. So it was pretty serious. It's going to destroy his relationships, eventually going to destroy his life. It's going to destroy his position. It's going to destroy everything. I mean, there's a lot of people in our world. They may look very successful in our eyes. Sometimes they have, it's only the one thing. Maybe we would say they have spiritual leprosy. They have a spiritual disease. They have spiritual death. They have spiritual issues that causes all kinds of havoc in their life. Desperation and uncertainty and fear of the future. So a lot of people are in this position. Even the people that we look up to or we respect or we honor, or we think, well, they've got everything going for them. No, they don't. It seems like maybe Naaman was trying to cover this up. I mean, quite often it seemed like he was wearing his armor. And I guess if you wear enough armor, you can cover up almost all of your skin so people do not even see that you have this secret in your life. But the secret is deadly, and the secret is contagious. We don't know all the history of what was going on with Naaman, but we know he had leprosy and he was desperate. So with that in mind, we think about what happened with this disease and how it was destroying his life. Well, how is he ever going to get rid of it? I mean, you could think about, well, he's gone to a lot of maybe doctors and professionals, and maybe he's even gone to his own gods that they worship and seeking help. But during these raids, they had taken this would be translated maybe a young girl, maybe a teenager at this point in her life. And so she is serving his wife. And this young girl says, well, I have an answer. I have a solution. I have a suggestion. I have something that can help. And so with confidence, she says, there's somebody in Israel. There's somebody that can help. There's somebody that can bring healing. If she'd only go see the prophet in Samaria, he might. No, it doesn't say he might. He could. Who knows? Possibly. He says he would. So she has a lot of confidence, not only in the power that is available, but also that this prophet would actually care enough to do it. So she seems to understand all. I mean, isn't there a huge lesson there for us? Teaching our children? I mean, she learned that from somewhere. Somebody's told her about God, evidently before she even went into captivity. I'm assuming her parents are not with her. She somehow knows about God and knows about God's people and God's leader and God's prophet. So she's aware. So she says, if you go to him. So the idea is, he said, well, maybe it's the last resort. I'll go. Now think about Naaman at this point. Does he not have to kind of humble him? I mean, that's still kind of our enemy. Those are the people that we fought against. I'm going to have to go and say, please, I beg you, you have something I need. I'm going to humble myself before you and ask for healing. So even him going is a sign of humility. So he went to the king, and they packed up a lot of goods and a lot of gifts and silver and gold and changes of clothes, and so they all went out. Went to the king, and the king of Israel said, We've been through this before. This is what they do. The enemy, they always come and they say, give us something that we're even unable to give or unwilling to give. And so he's saying, man, the king of Aram's trying to pick a fight with me. He knows who does he think I am? So eventually, the people say, well, there is somebody you can go to, Mr. King. Hello, you should know your people a little better than this. So eventually they ended up going, this big entourage went in order to find the solution, the cure. This is going to work out. But it takes a little bit of searching. It takes perseverance. I mean, at some point you could have thought, Naaman could have thought, well, I'm just going to go home. I'm tired of it. I mean, I get the runaround everywhere I go. How humiliating for me. I can't even get the help. They said it was available. Nobody seems to know what's going on. And so eventually he ends up before the prophet. And so he goes to Elisha. And he was sent in order to be healed. This is how God is working it out. It takes time. And it takes this perseverance. And we need that as well. That we've got to realize we can go to God. And sometimes the journey takes a while because we don't understand. We've got lots of questions. And maybe we go to people and then we study the Bible. And sometimes even studying the Bible, anybody know that it's not always that clear and understandable the first time you read it? It's kind of, I don't really understand what's going on. Is there somebody that can explain it to me? Does that sound familiar? I know somebody else asked that in the Bible. I'm reading the Bible. How do I understand unless someone explains it? So this is the way this event is unfolding for this man in his physical condition. How much more people in their spiritual condition? So Naaman went with all this stuff that he has to Elisha's house. And Elisha, it's kind of an interesting story. It seems like he went to the house and maybe one of Elisha's servants went and said, oh, there's somebody here. And so, this big commander says, well, I'm here to see the prophet. And he says, okay, well, wait a minute. I'll go get him. Went to Elisha and then Elisha said, oh, I don't need to talk to him. Maybe almost like today, the doctor writes a prescription, says, here, go give him this. And Elisha doesn't even come out and greet him. Doesn't even say hi. Doesn't even show, we would say, the proper respect or etiquette. And so I think Naaman's a little bit offended. He's like, oh, I thought that at least he'd come out and see me or say something to me. And then I kind of thought, it just seems like I don't want to do this. He says, go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan. Your flesh will be restored and you will be clean. So again, it's like today, doctor writing prescription and instructions, and we're like, well, I don't know if I really want to do that. It's like, is there something on this sheet of paper you don't understand? Oh, no, I understand it. I just don't like it. It's just going to make me feel uncomfortable. It's not something I was expecting. I thought I was going to get the other medication. Like this, how is this going to work anyway? It doesn't even make sense. And so he comes up with all kinds of excuses. I don't know if he just did this in his head or if he kind of explained it. But here it says, he said, I thought he would come out to me. That's number one. He's going to come out and see me. And then he'd stand and he'd call on the name of the Lord and he'd wave his hand on the spot. And I thought it was just going to be like a big production. Everybody could stand around and go, whoa, star of the show, watch all this happen. I thought it was going to be, something quite dramatic. That's what I'm looking for, some drama. I need more drama in my life. Yet, what does he tell me to do? I got to go down to the Jordan and wash? But I mean, aren't there other rivers? There's other rivers that are much cleaner. I mean, I can go back to Damascus. There's clean rivers there. Why do I have to stay here? I can wash in, water's water. Why does it really matter? But it's the clear instruction. And this is the problem that a lot of people have today. Clear instruction from God. And people say, well, I think I could do it a different way, or maybe I could do it a better way, or I can do something that is easier or more comfortable, or something that I have developed, I've thought of. Maybe I've talked to some of my friends, and they've said, oh, no, you don't need to do it that way. You can do it this way. Or maybe even I've talked to religious leaders and they say, it doesn't really matter what river, it doesn't really matter how you do it, it doesn't even matter how many times. I mean, what do you think this is? Superstition? I mean, who do you think God is? Some stingy guy that's like, well, you didn't keep the rules, so, well, that's kind of like saying to the doctor, I mean, yeah, I know what this medication says, but I'm not taking it. Quit being such a legalist, would you? He's like, well, I'm just asking, do you want to be healed? This is it. You don't want to be healed? Then go out and take whatever medication you want. I don't really care. Like, why would the doctor care, right? I mean, you choose. You're an adult. You're smart enough to figure this out. Take the medication, be healed. Don't take the medication, don't be healed. That's fine. You choose. Seems to be that's the attitude here. Do you want to be healed? I mean, even Naaman's soldiers come to him and say, yeah, but Naaman, think about it. If he had told you to do something great, so wonderful, if he told you to do something really dramatic, would you have done it? Well, yeah, I would have done that. Well, why don't you go and do the simple thing? All he does is say, you go, wash, be cleansed. It's easy. Just do the easy thing. So that's what he's calling him to do. Just obey the simple instruction, and then you will be healed. Now, again, a lot of people would say, well, I may go and do all of that, but would I really be healed? Well, I guess you can start by saying, well, go and try it, and if you're not healed, you haven't really lost anything. But apparently, he even had some faith, believing if he did this, he would be healed. I mean, why else would he have done it? He realized it was a humiliating thing, that it was a dirty river. It's like, how am I going to get clean in something that's not clean? I mean, does water really cleanse? Does dirty water cleanse? Well, just the obedience to what God said. Again, anything magical about the waters of Jordan? I mean, think about the number of people that probably have taken baths in the Jordan River. I mean, that's the way they didn't have indoor showers back then. Not everyone who bathed in the Jordan was healed of whatever disease they may have had. But he was, because he was told that's what he needed to do. He did it, and then he was blessed by it. So he went down, he dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, as the man of God had told him. His flesh was restored and became clean like that of a young boy. Don't know how old this warrior was, but I'm guessing he wasn't a young guy. To be a commander, to be the leader of the army, generally you don't give that to, the new recruit. So he's an older man. I don't know how old, but how sometimes you get older and your skin shows your age a little bit? Anybody familiar with that? I think we all are. I mean, even little kids can look at their mom and dad and go, or maybe your grandma, grandpa too. Oh yeah, so your skin, it just can tell you're old. You got spots, you've got like excess skin, you've got, you got wrinkles in your skin, you got lines, you can tell when somebody's older by their skin. But his skin was just not restored to, like we'd say, a 40-year-old man or even a 30-year-old man. His skin was restored like that of a young boy. I mean, that's quite a miracle, isn't it, to happen? To be restored to what we would maybe call, the prime, when you're most healthy, most energetic, when your skin is, the best it has ever been. So God just doesn't give him something average. He gives him something excellent that people are going to be like, wow, you went from leprosy to this. Do you have the card to that dermatologist? Because I'd like to go visit him too, right? This is how amazing it would have been. The transformation. And we talk about today the transformation that God makes in our life when we seek him. Hey, I got a problem. I need to find a solution. I may need to keep searching and looking, inquiring and asking. God tells me what I need to do. I need to listen and trust him, do what he says. And then I'll be blessed with something brand new on the inside. Now, we all know, even as an older person, when they respond and become a Christian, externally they're not new, but internally, what do we say? They're made new in Christ, a new creature. The old is gone and the new has come. Everything has changed inside because of this. Today we'd have to just really call it a miraculous transformation on the inside of the soul, inside the heart, maybe even in the mind. It's just a change that God has done. And so we are restored to the young boy, or, if we're a guy, well, that may even be to what? To the place of innocence, to the place of trust, to the place where we're free from all the cares and worries of the world, because kids generally just trust their parents. Most kids aren't concerned about how they're going to pay the bills or what's going to happen tomorrow. They're just kind of like, well, that's all taken care of. So they ended up going back to Elisha, and they stood before him. And listen to his response. Now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel, and please accept my gift, this gift. So what he's saying is there's only one God. He's the God of all the world. He's the God who loves and cares, the God of power, God of grace. There's only one God. And what does he want to do? In giving, he wants to, even their worship. He wants to participate in giving and worshiping God. And so here's a man that not only at this moment, he wants to continue in his life to honor and worship and follow and develop this relationship with the God back then that we would have called Jehovah. Not all the gods of the world, not all the idols, not all the man-made things that people have come up with that they call worship or call religion, but something that is true and real and something that works in their life to change. And maybe that's where the power is, not just talk, but actually in doing, following, obeying, and then we live the transformation. We just don't talk about it, hear it, think about it. We talk about everybody's life. Everybody else's life's been changed. But when our life is changed, then what happens? Well, maybe that's what happens when we become like a little slave girl that's working for someone else, and we see somebody else that's got a problem and say, if they would just go to my master, if they would just go to my God, if they would just go to seek healing and help and life, because maybe that little girl says, I saw it myself, I've experienced it, I know that there's a God that can heal your life. Now again, it's not necessarily the external, but he can heal your life. And so the story would then begin to be repeated over and over as we share the good news of God's healing, God's transformation. And so that's kind of how we ended up in Luke chapter 4, when Jesus is talking to the religious leaders and to the people of his own hometown. And he said, there are many people in Israel with leprosy in the time of Elisha. And how many of those people, how many of the Israelites, how many of God's people were cured? None of them. None of those people. There was one who was cured. Now, why weren't the people in Israel cured? They never asked. They didn't believe. I mean, if they believed that Elisha could heal them, they would have gone. If they wanted to have a change of life, they would have sought it out. There was only one, and that was Naaman, the Syrian. Now, if you want to get people mad, this is the kind of stuff you talk about. Because, when Jesus said that, the people were furious. Because, in a way, they were beginning to understand what Jesus is saying. You people of Israel, if you don't want it, I'm going to give this gift to the enemy, to the Samaritans, to the Gentiles, to the people that you would say aren't a part of the covenant, not a part of the promise. They're not included. They're unimportant. They're despised by us. And we know that, thank God, we at one time we would say, as Paul would say, the enemies of God have now found peace through the cross. And that's why Jesus came. So it's a beautiful story of following and listening and seeking. So we're going to sing a song, Have Thine Own Way, Lord. Have Thine Own Way. Thou art the potter, and I am the clay. Mold me and make me after thy will. This is our prayer. So if we can encourage you and help you in your Christian walk, we'll sing the song. Let us know how we can be a blessing and how we can serve you or pray with you. Ken's going to come up and lead us.